Okay, got you back here. We're going to just talk about the steps of setting up a guitar. And I've got you in this angle here because I just wanted to talk a little bit about neck relief too. But what are we trying to do with a setup? I mean, that's the question. What are we trying to accomplish? Well, we're trying to accomplish and limit the amount of buzzing the strings get, right? If we've got good frets and they've been leveled, which these probably haven't, we'll look at that. But if you've got a good truss rod and it adjusts well and you do, your string adjustments, to your liking. Some people like them lower, some people like them higher. You can actually, get a pretty good fretboard playability without a lot of buzzing and dead notes and such. But the problem we're facing here is we've got a string that moves up and down like this, right? And we're trying to block that string off or basically nail it down at some point and create another tone. So if we push here, the string's vibrating from here beyond, right? And if we're here, it's from the nut all the way to the tailpiece, which is your bridge at the back here. So as we go up, we're changing that vibration area, and that therefore it's shortening the length of the string and giving us a higher pitch. Well, the way a truss rod works, there's a truss rod inside of this neck here, and this happens to be one that you can get to up here to adjust at the front here, not at the back, which makes it a lot easier. And as you tighten that, you're turning, it's like you're turning the screw in there. And as you tighten that, it's going to flatten and pull the neck, say, down and fight against the tension of these strings. You get too flat of a neck, and you basically have your strings too close to the fretboard across, especially in the middle here, depending on where you're, I call a middle wherever the point between wherever the fretboard hits the body and where the nut is. That's the middle. Okay, I did want to talk about this before. Now, there are certain steps that I follow every time I'm doing this, and I just want to pass that information on to you right now. Now, these are something I got out of a book that you can buy at Thumac, I think, or probably for any decent Barnes & Nobles or something like that, it'll probably have this. This book is 99.9% garbage for me because I don't do a lot of things that are in here. I only use one sheet, and I'm not going to put it up here for copyright reasons. Go find it yourself. But I am going to tell you. Well, the first thing I do is I string the pitch. If I'm changing the strings, of course, this is normally when I do this, I will stretch them out as much as I can so they're perfectly stretched so they stay in tune. The next thing I do is put a capo on. Now, the capo I'm using here is just a very simple capo. This part here goes on the back of the neck. I install it right there on the first fret. Bam! You can't see that right now, but just trust me, it's there. Now, the next thing I typically do is I'll adjust the relief at the 7th fret. Now, how do I do this? Well, I use some different tools. The one tool that I use to check my relief is a gauge filler, I guess you could call it. What this is a bunch of thin pieces of metal that are ground precisely to a particular millimeter, I believe, in this case. And for a guitar like a Fender, I like to look at a relief at the 7th fret at about 0.012 inches. And so I'll go here to my trusty filler gauge, and I find myself the 0.12. Now, on these filler gauges, if you have one like mine, you see that shiny spot and then the dull spot. The dull spot is ground down just a little bit, maybe 2/10 or something like that of an inch smaller. So what I try to find is the one that ground part is what I'm looking for to be 0.012, and we've got it right here. I've been wanting to take these out of here because I think this is the only one I ever use of this. So there it is there. I don't know if you can see the thing, it's not enough light. So now let's dream that you are in Skycam mode now, and we're looking at this from the top to the bottom. I put my finger here somewhere around where, now let's make it a standard for you, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, which is right where the neck comes into the body. I put my finger down here, and looking from the top down on this, I go to the 7th fret, and I put in my filler gauge, and I do this as straight as I can. So here's 5, 6, 7. This is difficult, and actually that is pretty good. Can you hear that a little bit? That little bit of noise? That is just going in there. This thing is set up pretty good for 10s right now. That's pretty happy. Now, I also do the same thing on the high E string. Now, the question you might ask, well, why don't you do it for all the strings? Well, that's because we have a radius. And the middle strings, the 2 strings in the middle, and here's a good way to remember strings, eat and drink good beer everywhere. So the eat and drink and good are higher than, well, they should be if they're set up right, higher up than the two E strings because there's a radius of the neck. Again, you probably know that. So I'll come back here, I'll do the same thing. I'm going to step out of frame here for a second. I'm not even in frame. What am I talking about? Now I'm on the high E string, and I'm going to stick this puppy in. All right, here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And I'm going to see what it sounds like. That is... I'll have to come back to this and see after I set the string height, because that is maybe not enough relief, which may mean that this just down a bit. It's really close though. I'm not talking about way off. I'm talking about maybe a few tenths. But anyway, here we are. Let's move on. Okay, so we've adjusted our relief. We didn't have to do that here yet, but we're going to come back and check this out. Now, the next thing I want to do is I want to set the string height across the fretboard. Now, what I'm looking for is a particular string height across the 17th fret, is what I normally do. Now, I can raise and lower the saddles from the bottom down here, which is nice. Now, you can't see that here, but I'll show you that here in a minute. But what I'm looking for is a string height on the E to E, and then I'll adjust the others based on how the radius is. So I'll also have to have a radius gauge. Now, I'm not sure what the radius is in this guitar, so let me show you some handy-dandy tools to find that out. Okay, you go to your handy-dandy tool space on the internet, or maybe you're lucky enough to have a good guitar store around you might have things like this. I do not. And you'll get, this is just one type of this, you'll get a set of fretboard radius gauges, kind of like this. Now, you'll get more than this, because, you know, they might go up to a 12. Normally they start at 7 1/4 there. Now, most Fenders are 7 1/4, which is this guy right here. Now, let's see if this, now, this is not a Fender, but most T style or F style, let's say. So let's see if this is right. So what I do is I'll come in here. This might be tricky to do this way. And I'll put it under the string. I'll set it up on the fretboard here, and I'll look and see if there's any gaps, if it looks like it's flatter than this, or if this is right. So let me get this thing to stand up here for you. All right, see that? Now, you won't be able to see this, but I'll look and see. All right, we are a little flatter than this, so we probably are a 9 1/2 or a 10. So let's have a look. Pop this one out. I'm going to go to the 9 1/2 and see where we're at. There's the 9 1/2. Doesn't matter where you do this on the fretboard. The radius should be the same if it's done right. All right, we've got the 9 1/2 on there. We'll take a look, see if we. What I'm looking for, to see if we have any light coming from the nut side through, or if this thing's laying right on the fretboard. I tell you what, this might be a 10. So we'll pull this out. I have just a little bit of light, and we'll throw in the 10. See what we got. This is a 10. We're flat on the board. So you want to put it now. It doesn't really matter where you put it on the fretboard, but just make sure you put it in between the, remember, eat and drink, good beer everywhere, between the D and the G. Another good way to test this, especially when you're adjusting your bridge. Now, this is a Tele 3 saddle. It's going to be a little hard to get this radius perfectly, but when you're down here, and if you hear any strings that ring any differently, they're all about the same here. I don't have any completely open, then you know you pretty much have the right radius gauge. So it is a 10, so I'm going to use this gauge the rest of the time that we're setting this up when we're doing the string height. All right, when I pull you back here, I'll show you what I mean. Okay, I got you back here. We're going to look at pickup height, and I always look at the actual height of the pole piece.